Hello everyone, how's it going? I'm Crendor. Welcome back to some ASMR. And the last ASMR I did was about the NFL playoffs, and I was going to do one every week leading up to the Super Bowl. I ended up not doing that, and oh well, time has moved on. However, the NFL offseason has taken place, and I decided what a better way to talk about the NFL offseason than in an ASMR video on Goodnight, Crendor. So, if you don't like sports, get ready to hear me ramble about just random names and teams for a while. If you do like sports, maybe you'll enjoy listening to this and hearing my opinion on all of these NFL transactions in the offseason. I have a list of teams right here, and I'm just going to go through and mainly talk about the signings that each team has made or trades. So we'll start in alphabetical order, beginning with the Arizona Cardinals. So in March, they re-signed Alameda Ta'amu. I don't actually know who that is, but whatever. Biggest news was when they signed Mike Lupati, I believe his name is. Mike Lupati, who used to play now with the San Francisco 49ers and is probably one of the top offensive guards in the league. So moving over to Arizona is going to help them out quite a bit. And he'll have to protect for a lot of the, I guess, mediocre quarterbacks they have there. They have Carson Palmer, who seems to get hurt all the time. They also have Drew Stanton, and I believe Drew Stanton did a decent job last year, but I don't know if he's that great. However, he was probably a lot better than whoever that guy was that started for their playoff game. So, moving on, they also signed Corey Peters to a 3-year deal. Corey Peters, he was with the Atlanta Falcons, and I don't actually know much about him. So, they also signed Sean Witherspoon. I know they signed him to a 1-year, $3.58 million contract, and I believe he was pretty good. Apparently, he's had a lot of injuries lately, but it's kind of a 1-year prove-it deal. That's what they call a lot of these deals, are prove-it deals. So you sign the guy to 1 year, and it's kind of like prove it, and if he does prove it, you end up getting really high production value out of him. And he actually played with the Atlanta Falcons as well, and he played there since 2010, his best year being 2011, where he had 4 sacks and 115 tackles, and since then kind of gone downhill, but primarily to injuries. He's still pretty young, so Arizona hoping they can get some more out of him. They also managed to sign Lamar Woodley to a 1-year, $950,000 contract, and Woodley's used to be with the Raiders, kind of middle-aged NFL-wise. He's played 7 seasons in Pittsburgh, and he played 1 last year in Oakland, and they signed him to a 1-year deal, again, kind of a prove-it contract. And then they also signed Corey Redding to a 2-year contract. Corey Redding, I believe, was with the Colts. Yes, he played with Detroit, then Seattle, then Baltimore, and then Indianapolis. And so he's played a while, but I think they are just hoping to get something out of him. You know, he's actually a pretty good player, or at least he used to be a good player, but kind of a veteran guy to sign. Then A.Q. Shipley, a 2-year deal. He is a center. I think he's a center, or graded out positively in pass protection and in run blocking. So yeah, he's pretty sure he's a guard / center. So again, trying to bolster their offensive line. And then just the other day, they signed Nathan Slaughter, who apparently is older player that didn't really get a lot of recognition. Oh, I guess he's only 22, but he played at the Veteran Combine. So I think he was drafted maybe 2-3 years ago, and now he used the Veteran Combine to get back into football. And he ran the event's fastest 40 time. So he managed to make it onto the Cardinals team, although he'll have to make it onto the roster in the preseason. And that's the Arizona Cardinals. So next we move on to the Atlanta Falcons, who we just talked about a bit. They actually have a pretty busy offseason. They managed to re-sign kicker Matt Bryant to a 3-year, $8.5 million contract, which I don't know if I'd pay that much for a kicker. I don't know. Seems a little high to me, although Matt Bryant's a pretty good kicker from what I remember. I don't know how he did last year. I know he's done well in previous years. Let's see. Last year he went 10 for 10 under 30, 4 for 4 under 40, and 8 for 8 under 49, and then 7 of 10 from 50. That's actually really good. That's a 90% field goal kicking percentage. So, you know what? That's actually not that bad. He's actually an older kicker. He's played since 2002, but again, he's a kicker, and he's kicking in a dome, which is, Atlanta plays in a dome, so not bad. Now that I look at all those stats, I think that's actually a good move. They also released Steven Jackson, who used to be one of the top running backs in all of football. He played with the Rams for a while. He actually, how many see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He had 9 straight 1,000-yard seasons with the Rams, and then he went to Atlanta, and he managed to get 542 yards and then 707 yards. So that's quite a drop off, although he's I think he's somewhat injury prone. I know I've always seen him on the injury list, so I think he might be a good pickup for a team that needs running backs, or maybe some running back depth behind their already starter. So I think he'd be a nice veteran backup somewhere. I think he'll go somewhere. I think he's still got something left, if not just veteran leadership. They also released Harry Douglas, Justin Blaylock, and Jonathan Massaquoi. They re-signed T.J. Yates, Eric Weems, Charles Godfrey. They also signed Brooks Reed to a 5-year, $22 million contract. Brooks Reed used to be with the Texans. Yeah, he used to be with the Texans. And with Houston, he did not too bad. 41 tackles, 2 sacks last year. Although, I think his best year was his rookie year. Yeah, but I mean, a little bit of an upgrade on their defense. Then they also signed, although that's $22 million, but I guess it's 5 years, so they're just hoping. I don't know if I'd give him 5 years for $22 million. Justin Durant, I know he played with the Cowboys, and again, a guy that gets injured a lot. He actually played with the Jaguars for 4 years. And then he went to Dallas. His best season, then he went to Detroit, then he went to Dallas. 103 tackles in 2012 with Detroit, but he hasn't done as well since then. So they're hoping they get the non-injured Justin Durant. They also signed Mike Peterson, a guard/tackle, to a 3-year, $3 million deal. He's actually still pretty young, and he used to play with the Rams. So I don't know a whole lot about offensive linemen, to be honest, but and they also re-signed Antone Smith, the running back. They signed Leonard Hankerson to a 1-year, $1 million contract. He's a wide receiver, and I believe he was with the Redskins. Let's find out. He did pretty average with the Redskins. Nothing major, so just probably a number 3 wide receiver on the team. They also signed Adrian Claiborne to a 1-year, $3 million contract. Claiborne was with the Buccaneers, and he had a really good rookie season, 7.5 sacks. And then a really bad 2012, only playing in 3 games, probably got injured. And then 16 games, 6 sacks in 2013. And then only 1 game last season, he apparently tore his biceps. So if he can stay healthy, he's going to be really good for them. Bearing that he actually healed from his biceps injury. They also signed they signed Jacob Tamme to a 2-year, $4 million contract, who was with the Broncos. He's probably a backup, because I don't remember him. He had his best season in 2012 with Denver, but yeah, his name doesn't really sound too familiar. And that's really about it for the Falcons. Moving on to Baltimore. I know they signed a new offensive coordinator, and he is the ex-Bears coach, Mark Trestman. It'll be interesting to see what he does there. I know with the Bears he was kind of mediocre, but maybe he'll do better as a coordinator. Here's one a lot of people know. The Ravens actually released Jacoby Jones, and the Chargers signed Jacoby Jones. So, once very good kick returner, I believe is still a decent kick returner. His problem is that he doesn't do a lot on actual offense, and that's why they kicked him. But Chargers hoping they can get something out of him. The Ravens also re-signed Anthony Levine, re-signed Justin Forsett, although I believe something happened with one of the Baltimore running backs. And it was something like they got a DUI, and then he got cut. I don't think it was Forsett, though. Bernard Pierce is who it was. Yeah, Bernard Pierce. And he got signed by Jacksonville. The Ravens also signed Kendrick Lewis to a 3-year, $5 million deal. He is an ex-Kansas City Chief, and he played with Houston last year. And he actually recorded a lot of tackles, 84 tackles and 2 interceptions. So a pretty good year for him. He's only 26, and they got him to a 3-year, what was it again? $5 million contract. That's pretty cheap for a player that played pretty well and is still pretty young. They also acquired a 2015 4th round and 2015 5th round draft pick from the Detroit Lions in exchange for Haloti Ngata and a 7th round pick in 2015. If you don't know who Haloti Ngata is, he is a pretty good lineman. He's probably one of the best nose tackles in the NFL. However, he is getting pretty old. He's played since 2006. So he's played 8 years in the league, and when you're 6'4", 340 pounds, and you're in your 8th year in the league, you probably start to lose a step or two, probably putting on even a bit more weight, losing some muscle and strength. So they're gonna hope he's just as good as he's been, but even if you look at his stats, you can see he's not been playing a full 16-game season. The last 3 years, he hasn't actually played every game, while his first 6. He played 5 full seasons out of his 6 first seasons. The only season he didn't play 16 games was 2009, where he missed 2 games. And in 2012, he missed 2. 2013, he missed 1. In 2014, he missed 4. So you can see the numbers showing that he's getting hurt a little bit more, and he hasn't even been as productive, only getting 2 sacks and 32 tackles last year, which is pretty much his best stats cut in half. So we'll see what happens. But aside from that, the Ravens haven't done a whole lot. They signed Kamar Aiken to a 1-year, $500,000 deal. Rashawn Melvin, Patrick Scales, a lot of people that I don't really know about. They did sign Chris Canty to a 2-year, $4 million deal. He's a defensive end. He used to play, or he did play with Baltimore, so they re-signed him. And they also re-signed Lawrence Guy, another defensive lineman. So Baltimore not doing a whole lot. And here's a big one. The Buffalo Bills. Doug Marrone, their coach, just decided to quit. He literally just was like, I'm done. And so the Bills moved on and signed Rex Ryan, the old coach of the New York Jets. And Kyle Orton, their quarterback, retired. And they managed to acquire LaShawn McCoy from the Eagles in exchange for Kiko Alonso. So they traded one of their best young linebackers, Kiko Alonso, to Philadelphia in exchange for LaShawn McCoy, who's one of the best running backs in the NFL. However, he's played since 2009, and he's gotten 1,000 yards in 2010, 1,300 yards in 2011, only 840 yards, but he only played 12 games in 2012, and then 1,600 yards in 2013 and 1,300 yards in 2014, so still pretty young, and definitely going to improve Buffalo's running game. But Kiko Alonso is still a really good linebacker. In 2013, he had 159 tackles, 2 sacks, and 4 interceptions. But last year, he was injured the entire year with an ACL injury, so really interesting trade, because I think what Buffalo is realizing is that their defense played extremely well even without Kiko Alonso, and so they figured, you know what, we can just trade him, pick up another star caliber player like LaShawn McCoy, who's a proven star. And I think they have some doubts about Alonso with his ACL and if he's going to fit their defense, who's already playing well. So just a really interesting trade. I didn't see that coming at all. And they lost C.J. Spiller, who was one of their running backs that they drafted in either the first or the second round. They drafted him pretty high, and he's been with them for a while, but he left. And so there's a hole at running back, and that's one way to fill it. Their problem now is that they don't really have a quarterback. And speaking of which, they traded for Matt Castle and a 6th-round pick from the Vikings in exchange for a 2015 5th-round pick and a 2016 7th-round pick. So Matt Castle's still not going to solve your quarterback problems. He's decent. They also have E.J. Manuel. So they have what I would probably rate as a C for quarterbacks. Like, their quarterbacks aren't that great. They need a good quarterback in order to really make it far in the playoffs. I think right now with a mediocre quarterback, they could probably make the wild card, but I don't see them getting farther than the wild card. But I do hope they make it, because I actually like Buffalo. They remind me of the Cubs a little bit of the NFL, and being a Cubs fan, I can feel their pain. We also have re-signed Chris Hogan to a 1-year deal, who played pretty well. Re-signed Justin Brown and re-signed Corbin Bryant. They also signed LaShawn McCoy to a 5-year, $40 million deal. They also re-signed Jerry Hughes to a 5-year, $45 million deal, which is really big. Jerry Hughes, if you don't know who he is, played with the Indianapolis Colts for 3 years, and I believe he was drafted pretty high, and people thought he was a bust. He didn't really play that well in Indianapolis. In 12 games, he had 0 sacks, and then the next year, he only had 1 sack, and then the following year, he had 4 sacks. And they were like, you know what, this is a bust pick. They'd let him go. He goes to Buffalo, and he gets 9 sacks in 2013, and then 9.5 sacks in 2014. So really just comes alive and plays great, and really fills the need of a pass rusher, and is probably one of the top players on their defense. And so re-signing him is really big. It keeps their defense going, which was their best thing last year. They also re-signed Jordan Gay to a 2-year contract, and he is the kickoff starter. Yeah, he's their punter. They also signed Jerome Felton to a 4-year, $9 million deal, a fullback. So if you bring in LaShawn McCoy, to run the ball, they probably need someone to block for him, and so they go out and get Jerome Felton, who actually has played for Detroit, Indianapolis, and Minnesota. So he's been around the block, and I think he's done pretty well. I think he made the Pro Bowl 1 or 2 times. Apparently he's the second highest paid fullback now behind Mike Tolbert. We also have the Bills signing Kyle Williams to a 1-year, $10 million contract extension and releasing Scott Chandler. Kyle Williams, another guy who's one of the top defensive linemen in the NFL. He had 10 sacks in 2013 and 5 sacks last year with 42 total tackles and an interception, which came against the Bears. So a good player there. They also, like I said, released Scott Chandler, who was their starting tight end for quite a while, for as long as I can remember. He's now with New England, and he's been with Buffalo since 2010. So again, he's played with them for a while. Now moving on. They also re-signed Jarius Wynn to a 2-year, $2 million deal. I know he used to play with the Packers, actually, for a few years. And so he's traveling around the league. Not doing too bad. They also signed Tyrod Taylor to a 3-year, $3 million deal, a quarterback. And he hasn't really done a whole lot. But I guess they're just keeping him around for competition, probably in the preseason. They re-signed Marcus Easley, another wide receiver. And they also managed to sign Percy Harvin to a 1-year, $6 million deal, which is kind of another prove-it contract. And I think it's a pretty good idea. The only bad part is Percy Harvin's been shown to be kind of a toxic player. But, if you can kind of keep him calm, win some games, get him the ball, he might be able to do some big plays for you. But again, it's kind of a high risk, high reward type of situation. And finally, for the Bills, they signed Charles Clay to a 5-year, $38 million deal. So they lose Scott Chandler, but they go out and get Charles Clay of used to be with the Miami Dolphins. He started playing in 2011. He had 200 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. Then in 2012, he had 200 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. 2013, he started to come out of his shell, and he had 759 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns. And last year, 600 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. So they go out and get this big tight end target, hoping that maybe it'll help their receiving and quarterback situation, since they also have Sammy Watkins, who they drafted very high last year. And I like what they're doing in Buffalo. I think now you have Charles Clay, you got Percy Harvin, you got LaShawn McCoy. They got some weapons on offense to actually help out that defense, and I'm excited. I think the Bills are going to do pretty well, and I hope they do, because I actually like them. And with that, we're going to move on to the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers have signed Michael Orr to a 2-year, $7 million contract. If you don't know who Michael Orr is, he is the one that had a movie made about him a few years ago. I forget what that movie was actually called, but that is the guy from that movie, Michael Orr. The Panthers also signed tight end Greg Olsen to a 3-year, $22 million contract extension. Greg Olsen, a pretty good player for the Panthers, used to play with the Bears. Colin Cole also re-signed to a 1-year, $1.05 million contract. Colin Cole used to play with the Green Bay Packers, so I actually know who he is. They also released D'Angelo Williams, the running back, safety Thomas DeCoud, and re-signed Chris Scott, offensive guard, to a 1-year, $800,000 contract. Into re-signings a little bit later, they re-signed Brenton Burson, a wide receiver, Brian Folkerts Ben Jacobs, Joe Webb, Fozzie Whitaker, and brought back Ted Ginn on a 2-year, $4 million contract. Really the only big name there would be Ted Ginn. He was drafted by the Panthers. No, he was drafted by the Dolphins, actually, back in 2007. And then he moved to San Francisco. Then he went to Carolina and had a pretty good year, actually. And then he went to Arizona and didn't do so well, and now he has returned to Carolina, hoping that he can do just as good as he did back when he played with them 2 years ago. Panthers also re-signed Ed Dixon, 3-year, $6.8 million contract. I actually don't know much about him, but according to this, he was a pretty solid backup behind Greg Olsen, so not a bad thing to have, 2 good tight ends. They also signed Dwan Edwards, defensive tackle, to a 2-year, $4 million contract. Signed corner Teddy Williams to a 2-year, $1.8 million contract, and signed safety Kurt Coleman to a 2-year, $2.8 million contract, and waived third-string tight end Mike McNeil. Next, we will move on to the Chicago Bears. So, the Bears fired GM Phil Emery, coach Mark Trestman, offensive coordinator Aaron Cromer, defensive coordinator Mel Tucker, and hired Ryan Pace, ex-Denver coach John Fox, offensive coordinator Adam Gase, and defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. I also believe they're switching over to a 3-4 defense with this new defensive coordinator. So that's something the Bears have not done. And after the way their defense played last year, I'm not surprised they're doing something this drastic to shake things up. So the Bears re-signed Zach Miller to a 1-year, $600,000 contract. He's a tight end. They also made a trade, trading Brandon Marshall away. They acquired a 2015 fifth-round pick from the Jets in exchange for Brandon Marshall and a 7th-round pick. If you didn't know, Brandon Marshall is a pretty good wide receiver. He played... Actually, it opened a page for Brandon Marshall on the Denver Broncos. Apparently, he has the same name as the Bears' Brandon Marshall, but I'll just talk about him anyway. Wide receiver Brandon Marshall, it's mentioned right here, is a player who's played for Denver a while back, and he also got traded to the Bears, I believe from the Dolphins. He went from the Broncos to the Dolphins, then to the Bears, and he's been a good player, but he's also had off-field issues, and I think the Bears got kind of tired of those off-field issues, even though he had improved them, but they decided to move forward, and so the Jets, who are very much in need of wide receiver help, decided to trade for him, and a 5th-round pick for a possible 1st or 2nd string wide receiver is really good. However, you do get those off-field issues, so the Jets are willing to risk that, apparently. Also, the Bears re-signed Jimmy Clausen to a 1-year, $1.1 million contract, and he's a backup quarterback, so that's pretty much typical backup quarterback money. Bears also signed Pernell McPhee to a 5-year, $38 million deal. I had not actually heard of Pernell McPhee. Apparently, he played on the Baltimore Ravens last year, and throughout his career, he's actually played pretty well with the Baltimore Ravens. He first played in 2011. He had 6 sacks, 23 tackles. The next year, he had 21 tackles and 1.5 sacks. Then 20 tackles, 2 sacks, and last year he had 27 tackles, and 7.5 sacks. So last year being one of his best years. However, a lot of these players that have a really good year, that previously only had decent years, will play that way because they know it's their contract year. So they play really hard, hoping to get a good season and get a big contract like he just got. What was it again? 50 million? Is that what it was? 38 million. 5 years, 38 million. So still not that bad. And what tends to happen is they kind of let their foot off the gas pedal, really, and they don't play as well. I've seen that happen to quite a few guys. So it's possible he's very motivated. He goes out there and plays well. It's also possible that he takes the money and he's like, well, I got a lot of money. I'm just going to sit back and, coast along. So the Bears are hoping that he's going to play hard. The Bears also signed wide receiver Eddie Royal to a 3-year, $15 million contract. Eddie Royal, a guy who's played for a while. I know he's been with Denver and San Diego. Yeah, he used to play with Denver. And he spent his last 3 years in San Diego. This is his 8th year, so he has been around a while. But the Bears need wide receiver help after losing Brandon Marshall. The Bears also signed Antrell Roll to a 3-year, $11 million deal. Antrell Roll, free safety, and a pretty good free safety at that, although he's also played a long time. I believe he's in his 10th or 11th year in the league. So he's been playing. He got drafted by Arizona, and then he went to New York, the Giants, and 2005. So he's been playing football since my sophomore year of high school. So that's a long time ago. And I'm sure it's a long time ago for you as well. So he's granted the Bears do need a lot of veteran leadership because they're a very young team, very not good team that needs to get better, and I think they're hoping that he helps them out in that case. Bears also signed Vlad Dukas to a 1-year, $800,000 deal, and Thomas Gafford to a 1-year, $950,000 contract. Also re-signed Dante Rosario. I know he played some games because I heard his name when I would watch some of their games. And apparently he's kind of a backup style run blocking tight end. They also signed Mason Foster to a 1-year deal. Mason Foster, a guy who's played in Tampa Bay his whole career and done pretty well. He's also suffered some injuries, though. Apparently last year he suffered a pretty big biceps injury. And so Bears hoping he can make a comeback to the way he played in 2012 and 2013, where he got around 100 tackles each season, which is quite nice. His best season coming 2013, where he had 90 tackles, 2 sacks, and 3 interceptions. And that'll do it for the Bears. Actually, no, I missed out on a few. There's Ray McDonald, who signed a 1-year contract. And Ray McDonald, actually a really good player with the San Francisco 49ers, getting about 30 tackles, 40-ish tackles a season, and averaging about 3 to 4 sacks, which is really good for a defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman, not outside. But his big issue is he has suffered some off-field issues and could be penalized by the league. So Bears kind of risking it here. I don't know if you'd want to bring these types of players into your locker room either, with off-field issues and all that type of stuff, but that's the Bears. And finally, Jarvis Jenkins signed to a 1-year deal. Jarvis Jenkins, formerly of the Washington Redskins, now moving to the Bears, and kind of a backup defensive end his whole life, hoping to get a starting job. However, Redskins Jarvis Jenkins back a year ago was banned 4 games for performance-enhancing drugs. So yet again, Bears signing some not so good locker room personalities, but let's move on. Cincinnati Bengals. Moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals. Recently, they re-signed kicker Mike Nugent to a 2-year, $3.5 million contract. I don't know about that one. Let's see his statistics. I know we saw that other kicker, Matt Bryant, earlier. Mike Nugent went 6 for 6 under 30, 10 of 12 from under 39, 10 of 12 from under 49, and went 0 for 3 from 50 plus, making him kick 78%, which is not that good. Apparently the kicker market has thinned out pretty quickly, so I think the Bengals just got a little desperate and decided to sign him, even though he's kind of just an average kicker, not that great, you know. Some kickers are automatic. They make almost every field goal they kick. This guy, 78%'s not that good. Not even a B, really. So, what are you going to do? I don't know if I'd pay him what he's being paid, but apparently they think so. They also re-signed Ray Maluga to a 3-year, $15 million contract, which I think is a good thing. He is one of their leaders in linebacker and gets quite a few tackles and doesn't get a lot of sacks, but from what I've seen, he's a pretty big leader on their linebacking core and defense. They also re-signed Clint Bowling to a 5-year, $26 million contract, left guard, and they signed ex-Packer A.J. Hawk to a 2-year, $3 million contract. A.J. Hawk, a guy who I know a lot about from being a Packer fan and watching him play his entire career, and I don't know if I would even pay him that much money, but he's definitely a veteran leader. But the problem with A.J. Hawk is he was a top 5 draft pick. I believe he was like 4 or 5 when the Packers took him. They needed linebacker help. And he was decent, but he was never a superstar or anything. He was just kind of a pretty good player. And as of late, he's gotten older and he's gone downhill even further to the point where he got benched last year because of how slow he was. And so that's why I say he's actually a pretty good veteran leader. But to pay him 2 years, $3 million, I probably would have given him maybe 1 year for $1 million. I think that'd probably be a fair deal, but good on him. He's getting paid and he's gonna go play more. They also re-signed Eric Winston to a 1-year, $870,000 contract. They re-signed Chris Lewis Harris to a 1-year, $585,000 contract, and the big signing here, they signed Michael Johnson to a 4-year, $20 million contract. If you don't know about Michael Johnson, he played with the Bengals from 2009 to 2013. His biggest season coming in 2012, where he had 11.5 sacks. And in 2013, he had 3.5 sacks and 56 tackles. And then he went to Tampa Bay, where he had 27 tackles and 4 sacks. And they paid him quite a lot of money to do that. But apparently he also took plays off. He didn't play as hard as he could have. And because of that, Tampa Bay got rid of him. And now, ironically, he ends up back in Cincinnati. So maybe he'll play a little bit harder being back in the place he played for so long. I know the Bengals will hope that as well. And on the other end, they have Carlos Dunlap, who is a really good defensive end. So the Bengals' defensive line is very good. I know they also have an interior defensive lineman who's pretty good. I forget his name, though. But I do know. Hold on. Is it Geno? Yeah, Geno Atkins is the guy. He's one of the best defensive linemen or defensive tackles in the NFL. So that's a really good defensive line as long as they all play to their potential. They also re-signed Devon Still and Brandon Gee to undisclosed contracts. And I think we're going to be wrapping up this session with the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns re-signed Kyle Shanahan, offensive coordinator, I can't even talk. Offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan resigned, and they hired John DeFilippo to replace him. They also signed Josh McCown to a 3-year, $14 million contract, which I think is not a good idea, but good on you, Josh McCown. If you don't know who Josh McCown is, he has played with a lot of teams. He got drafted by Arizona in 2002. And since 2002, he's played with the Cardinals, the Lions, the Raiders, the Panthers, the Bears, and the Buccaneers. And now he's making a stop in Cleveland. So really, he's getting a tour of the United States. He's been all over. But he has played decent. I think he's a very good backup quarterback. His best season actually came in 2013 with Chicago, where he threw for 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns and only 1 interception, which are really good numbers. But the problem is that's really the only good season he's had. And last year he played in Tampa Bay, and they had one of the worst offenses in the entire National Football League. And he threw for 2,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. That's a career-high interception number for him. Bypassing his 11 interceptions he threw with Oakland and Arizona. So, I'd have to say that his Chicago numbers may have been a little bit of a fluke. I think he had a lot of good weapons around him. And I don't think he's got a lot of good weapons around him in Cleveland, but, 3 years, $14 million. He's just looking for a payday now, and he got one. So he's the quarterback until Johnny Football proves himself worthy of being the quarterback, and that'll be an interesting situation to watch unfold. Cleveland Browns. I'm glad they're not my team. So the Cleveland Browns also re-signed Sean Drone, running back, to a 1-year, or Sean Drone, to a 1-year, $660,000 contract. They re-signed their punter, Spencer Lanning. They also signed Brian Hartline to a 2-year, $6 million contract. Brian Hartline played with Miami, and he recorded 2 1,000-yard seasons in 2012, 2013. But last year, he only had 474 yards. So, a little bit of a drop-off for Brian Hartline, but could be possible that he'll try to revive his career over in Cleveland. Also, the Cleveland Browns signed Dwayne Bowe, ex-Kansas City Chief, to a 2-year contract. Dwayne Bowe had his best season in 2010 with the Kansas City Chiefs, although he's been playing with them since 2007. 2010, he had 1,100 yards and 15 touchdowns. Last year, however, he had 754 yards and 0 touchdowns. So, how do you go an entire year as a wide receiver, starting wide receiver, and not get any touchdowns? Is baffling to me, really. But the Chiefs actually played pretty well without getting touchdowns to their wide receivers, but it doesn't go well for the wide receivers, the fact that they couldn't get open or make plays to get in the end zone. Granted, could have been the quarterback, but that's just a weird situation. But he'll go to Cleveland, and we'll see what happened. I hope he gets at least one touchdown. Cleveland also re-signed wide receiver Marlon Moore to a 3-year, $2.85 million contract. They signed quarterback Thaddeus Lewis to a 1-year contract. Kind of a backup quarterback. He had in 6 games, 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions with Buffalo. So not bad numbers, but not great numbers either. We'll see what happens there over in the preseason. And they also signed John Hughes, defensive end, to a 4-year, $14 million deal. He's played with Cleveland his whole career, was drafted in 2012. Not a bad player, but as that's a contract extension through 2019. Apparently he's also coming off a season shortened by a knee injury. But I don't know why you'd extend a player that he's performed well, but not great. 34 tackles, 3 sacks in 2012, 1 sack, 33 tackles in 2013, and you're going to give the guy that much money. I don't know if that's really worth it, but apparently he's also a good run stopper, so more power to him. Maybe he will actually come back from an injury and play well. Also, the Browns signed Randy Starks, defensive lineman, to a 2-year, $8 million deal. That's actually a really good deal. Randy Starks is one of the better defensive linemen in the league, at least one of the better defensive linemen in free agency that was available. He's been playing since 2004, and he played in Tennessee for 4 years and then went to Miami, where he also played really good for 7 years. So he's been in the league about 11 years, but he seems to still be pretty good. Last year he got 27 tackles and 3.5 sacks. The previous year he had 48 tackles and 3 sacks. So I think that's a really good signing, and for pretty cheap, honestly, for a player that good. And finally, for the Browns, they signed ex-Packer Tramon Williams to a 3-year, $21 million contract. And I know a lot about Tramon Williams, having, again, watched the Packers. But the big thing with him is he's played since 2007. And he took over and played extremely well. He helped them in their Super Bowl year to win the Super Bowl. And he's gotten a lot of interceptions. I think he's a very good cornerback. I think he's going to play pretty well there. But he is 32 years old, which is getting a little bit older for a corner. He also got called for a lot of defensive pass interference plays, a lot more than usual. And generally, as that keeps happening, that means that the corner is getting a little slower and they can't keep up with the wide receiver. And so they start doing plays like kind of holding onto him or pushing him in order to help themselves get an edge to make up for that loss of speed. And that did start happening in the last year or two. So no doubt he's still a very smart player. He's still a very good player. He's got good hands, but he may be losing a step. But 3 years, $21 million. That's probably a lot of money for him, but I can see why he took it. He probably would have only gotten maybe 2 years for like 12, 13. I don't even think that. Probably like 2 years for like 9 or 10 million in Green Bay. So good on you, Tramon. Although it is Cleveland, so I don't think that's going to be a very fun experience because I don't see Cleveland going anywhere anytime soon. But that's it for page 1 of the NFL offseason transactions. We will move on to page 2 of 4 pretty soon here. I'm probably going to be doing this every day. Thank you for listening. And in our next video, we will start off with the Dallas Cowboys. So, see ya.